Hi, my name is Jessie Finkelor. I'm an 8th grader at Vinci Charter Academy. We're working on a class project that I'm really excited about.
Yay!
Hi!
Hi! Good to see you!
Good to see you.
Welcome! How was lacrosse?
Good.
Yeah. Nobody hit you with a stick?
No.
Okay, good. So come on in.
This past Sunday, I went over to my good friend Joe Krovoza's house. I've known him since I was a little kid. He was the former mayor of Davis from 2011 to 2014. I wanted to interview him and get his perspective on my research project.
Great, so I got your question.
So, in my class right now, we are doing a project called Monumental. It's where our class splits up into teams and we each get assigned a category where we have to create a monument that is contributed to them and to honor them. And our team is politicians and presidents. We also had to write a card to someone you looked up to and who somehow related to your category. And so I chose you, obviously, and I was hoping that you could answer a few of my questions.
I'd be pleased to.
Okay, you ready?
Sure.
So, who are some of your favorite politicians, like, especially from earlier in American history?
Okay.
And why, and what makes them a good politician?
Very good. So I would say that if we go back to the earliest days of political history, then it would be probably Thomas Jefferson, because he was one of our founding fathers. And he was very diverse in his interests. So he was interested in agriculture, and he was interested in government, and he was also an ambassador to France for a period of time. So he was international and he was domestic. But what was very impressive about the founding fathers is that, you know, they had to figure it out totally fresh from scratch.
Yeah.
You know, their job was to decide what they didn't like about the English and then decide how America was going to, you know, do it a little bit better and make it in a little bit more lasting way. And so they came up with the idea of the federal government, the states, and so on. So that would be if I go all the way back to the founding fathers.
Yeah.
If I go to kind of more recent, then it would be Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And he had to deal with the Great Depression, and he had to figure out how to do government different. And he had to think about not just having a passive government, but a much more active government that played more of a role in improving the lives of Americans. So I've always admired Franklin Roosevelt very, very much after you get past the founding fathers.
Yeah. Okay, so what are some of the reasons that made you get into politics and want to be the mayor of Davis?
So that's an interesting question, because I don't think that I got into politics. So I would say that I got into public service because in Davis I served on the Bike Commission, and I did a lot of work with other nonprofit organizations like the Puda Creek Council, and I helped found a group called Bike Davis. And so that was all about public service. And in Davis, the city government is not Democrat or Republican. It's just 5 citizens who are elected to think about what the city needs. So I view my time in Davis on the city council and my 3.5 years as mayor as more public service. And so for me, serving on the city council was just a way to kind of extend my public service. So, you know, I was an AYSO coach, and, you know, I helped my kids in school, and I liked doing things in the community, and so city council was a way to kind of do the most I could possibly do for my community.
Okay. And what are, like, would you say the most remarkable things that you accomplished when you were the mayor of Davis?
Well, there were a number of things, but I think that the number one that maybe everybody knows is the new water project. And when I became mayor, there were a lot of good ideas getting going to make sure that we got cleaner water and we had a more secure supply. But the big problem was that Davis, as a city of 65,000 people with a major university, was still taking 100% of our water from the ground. and that was making the ground start to sink, and the quality of the water was getting low. And if anything really went bad with the groundwater supply, then we'd have big problems for clean water for the citizens of Davis. So the water project was about a $200+ million project with the city of Woodland, and getting that approved and getting the people to approve rates to pay for it, that was really probably the biggest example. But there were other things too. I was mayor during a time when the budgets had to be cut, and so we had to reduce the staff of the city at the same time that we made sure that we provided as much service as possible, so saving dollars. And we did a number of things to kind of improve the relations between the university and the city. And we're a great college town, but sometimes the city and the university don't work as well together. So one of the things we did is we made sure we started to organize the two fire departments, the fire department at the university and the fire department in the city, into a single fire department. And we made some big steps in that direction. And that's going to save us hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, but also it's going to provide better service, because if a fire is close to the university fire department, then we should have the university fire department respond quicker. And if it's closer to the city department, even though it might be on the campus, we should have the city respond. But I'd say the other thing that I really see every day is there's 300 acres of land that's east of Mace Boulevard and north of Interstate 80. And we did the largest open space acquisition in the history of the city of Davis while I was mayor. And I spearheaded that, and we had to push for it hard, and it wasn't easy. So preserving 300 acres of farmland is also, one of the other great things that I was really proud of as mayor.
Okay. What was your favorite, or the most, I don't know how to say this, but what did you learn when you were there?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing that I learned was that elected officials who are serving on the city council, there's two ways you can view your job. One is that the people elected you, and so they're just going to trust you to do whatever you think is the right thing to do. And so if that's the idea, then you feel pretty good. Okay, they elected me, I could just decide what I want to do and do it. But the other idea is that they elected you to listen to them. And so on every single issue, you need to really listen to the people and try to decide what the people want. And that's a very different idea. That's kind of democracy playing itself out on every single issue. And I think service is kind of a balance between, because maybe the people are super supportive of something, but because you know a whole lot about it, you have to do something that's a little bit different than what the people want. But sometimes you might feel strongly that something is really the smart thing to do, but so many people want you to do something different that you have to really respect the fact that you're different than the people, but it's the best thing for the city because a lot of people want it. So balancing between what the people want, or at least the people that are communicating with the city council, and what you might want, I think was the biggest challenge and the biggest thing that I learned when I was a mayor.
So what are some of the differences and similarities between politics or public service from now and back in the 1800s when they were starting this new country?
You bet. I think the biggest difference, without any question, is the ability of people to communicate with the government and the government to communicate with people. And so, you can imagine back in the, late 1700s, how did anybody really know what their government was doing? There were, bulletins that were probably posted around, and there were memos that were circulated. Everything was handwritten. There was much less that was written. And today, we obviously have computers and we have the internet, and people can see, all the time what their government is doing.
Just flies across the internet.
It flies. And so at the same time, there's more information. And if you want to really make an impact on an issue, you have to read a lot. So, for example, my daughter Lillian was very, very interested in the fact that the city of Davis might not use Wells Fargo Bank for their banking. And I started to tell Lillian about that issue because when I was the mayor, there were people that didn't want us to use Wells Fargo Bank, not because Wells Fargo had been bad, but because Wells Fargo wasn't a local company and people wanted us to use a local bank. So I told Lillian there were all these reports that she really should go read first about the relationship between the city and Wells Fargo Bank, because it's not easy just to switch your bank. You know, it costs you money and time to do that. So the amount of information now and how it flows is just tremendous, and it's almost to the point where there's so much information. You know, it's difficult for both the politicians and the public servants, the people serving on a city council, and the people to get on the same page, because you know, one person reads one thing and another person reads another thing. So having common information that everybody agrees to, that you can make a decision from, I think is that's the huge change. And the other thing is that, you know, there's so many more things that government does. You know, it used to be the U.S. government was pretty centralized and dealt with the currency and, you know, foreign policy, and now you've got healthcare and you've got education and you've got transportation and you've got energy. So there's so many more things that government does today than it used to do in the past. That's another huge difference.
Yeah. Okay, and I have one more question for you. What is your favorite monument to a political figure, and what do you think makes it a good monument, or just a good monument?
Well, that's a fantastic question, because I want to not answer it, but I want to say that my favorite monument is the Vietnam Veterans Monument in Washington, D.C. I can think of the political,
the Black Wall,
yeah, and because it was designed by a woman.
20-year-olds.
Yeah, she was only 20, and she was brilliant, and she, I think, wasn't even born when the Vietnam War was taking place, but she had the vision to kind of grasp the whole idea of the war. And you know what that says to me is that the Vietnam War was a very deep wound in America. It was a decision that was not well considered, and we did the wrong thing there. And the monument is kind of a wound in the earth. It's like a cut into the earth. And so it represents
I was just watching a movie on that, and it was about, like, it was just so beautiful and creative how she thought of that. And I think it's really cool. You can walk around and just take the time to try to find the names.
Yeah.
And then there's also, like, a lot of people who were against this idea, and, like, veterans who thought it was just sorrowful and not. Like,
right.
Yeah.
But it respects the veterans, because everybody who died has their name on it. And then there's also a statue for those right next to it. There's a statue kind of showing those that, you know, were in battle. So it wasn't just about those that lost their lives. But wonderful. Those are very good questions.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's fun to think about
Do you
them.
have any more things you want to add?
Well, I would add that for students at Da Vinci and all students in Davis, that they should know that the Davis City Council, that's making all the decisions about how to run the city, is very, very accessible. And the City Council meets Tuesday nights every other week, so every 2 weeks they meet. And I think the meetings are starting now at 6:30 or 7 o'clock. And at the beginning of the meeting, there's what's called public comment. So you can show up and anybody can have 2 to 3 minutes to say whatever they'd like. And students really do make a difference at the Davis City Council. And so I know recently students from the high school showed up to complain that the school district was using poisons to kill rats on the school district property. And that's not necessarily bad, because you have to do something to control the rats. But then these raptors, birds, particularly hawks, were eating the rats, and then they would get poisoned too and die, and that was bad. So the students showed up to the city council and asked them to start getting involved in making sure that wouldn't be the case, and the city council responded. So students themselves can really make a difference. And when I was mayor, I remember a number of cases the students wanted a better bike park, and they showed up and they talked about having a bike park where they could do tricks on their bikes and so on, and we got started trying to plan a bike park. So students can really have an impact, and all students should think about going and getting involved in an issue or two or three. It's a great place. Not all cities can you really show up and speak in front of the city council. But they're friendly people, they're good people, and they care about the community. And quite frankly, some of the people that know the city the best are the ones that are riding their bikes all around and they're going to school all day long. The adults, maybe they go up to Sacramento during the day. They may not know the city as well as the students. So students have a lot to say, and I hope they do. So,
Thank you so much for your time.
great.
And I'm glad that I learned them.
I'm really happy to do it, Jessie. And I want to just say, too, I love Da Vinci because my oldest daughter, Charlotte, went to Da Vinci, and it was a great education for her. And she loved learning with groups and working with groups. And she's a teacher now in San Francisco. So Da Vinci is very close to my heart. So I'm happy to do this.
High
And
five.
very good. Okay.
Okay, so wait, I really compose myself. Oh, I have a big bump. Damn. I have to get that out. I just edit that part out.